Hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on a Tuesday. A few minutes behind the schedule, but we have a fun show laid out for you today as there's a lot going on in this city. Obviously, college basketball is in full swing. Xavier, well, we'll talk about Xavier later on today. We'll also talk about the big, I guess, Southwest Ohio rivalry. I guess that's what we call it. It's not quite a cross-town rivalry, but it's across Cincinnati, Dayton metropolitan era. Right, UC and Dayton play tonight at Fifth Third Arena. We'll touch on that a little bit. To get in price is, I just saw this, $35 for that game. My goal is by 11 o'clock to convince Stone Shields, an ardent UC fan, to get tickets to that game tonight. Also, across the Commonwealth, we got the Bluegrass rivalry. We won't touch on that, but we will have a guest on tomorrow that will talk about Louisville and Kentucky. Just found out that Kobe Rogers, I don't know if any high school sports fan, he played at St. X University. He's now playing, or St. X High School. He's now playing for Louisville, and that kind of got me fired up because that dude is a ball player. That's tonight as well. But obviously the big news yesterday was that Joe Burrow returned to practice and kind of set a circled a date on the schedule of when you can potentially anticipate seeing Joe Burrow back in a jersey playing for our Cincinnati Bengals. And if that's just a mirage, if that was just a feel-good story, or if this is going to be something that can turn around this bleak season and the current 3-6 Cincinnati Bengals. Reed Mouse, Stone Shields with me today. Stone, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for producing. Got a good show. I know you have a great show lined up in the 11 o'clock hour. Have Keegan Nickerson coming on talking about that UC Dayton game tonight. Are you scared that I'm going to deplete your wallet by $35 by convincing you to go to Fifth Third Arena tonight?
Look, it's only a matter of time before I make my way down to Fifth Third Arena this year, but I don't think it'll be tonight. Should be a great game, though. UC favored by 5.5. It seems like kind of a lot, but yeah, looking forward to talking to Keegan Nickerson of Bearcat Journal at about 10 minutes after 11, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. It's going to be a fun game tonight. I admittedly, last night was the first time that I sat down and watched a big portion of college basketball. It wasn't a fun watch for me tonight, but I'll be sitting down tonight once again to watch some more. Both those big games that are tonight, UC and Dayton, and then obviously Louisville and Kentucky. We'll talk about Xavier later on in the show. But I wanted to start off with the biggest news in town, and that is the fact that Joe Burrow kind of shocked the NFL world. Certainly surprised us here in this room, certainly surprised most media members that he had come back to practice yesterday. He is now tentatively, of course he's not going to play this weekend, but he kind of alluded to when they want him to come back or when he wants to come back, and that is in a couple weeks on Thanksgiving against the Baltimore Ravens and play in that primetime game, the game that has made big waves over the last few years, that Thursday night football game in Maryland, where the Bengals and the Ravens have had, just barn burners of games. And here's the thing. The news comes out. Bengals fans, I get excited. Stone gets excited. All the guys at Chatterbox Bengals, pretty much everyone watching this show that is a Bengals fan, get excited. Because the player that we now for 6 years have thought that is going to get to the promised land someday is going to not only come back this season, but come back earlier than expected. Less than 2 months ago was when he got this surgery on this turf toe. And we were told it was going to be a 3-month-long recovery. And we're 2 months in, and he's already back to practicing. Has 21 days to be activated, which would bring him right around the start of December. But there is that game, that Thursday before we get to December that, once again, is circled, and it seems like he wants to play that game if he's able to, but there's a big caveat on if it's even viable, and that is, can the Cincinnati Bengals win one of their next 2 games to keep any thought whatsoever, any hope whatsoever of this season alive? We flip-flop on this show quite a bit, and I'm done apologizing for it because I'm just firing from the hip on how I feel on any given week. And I've called this season dead back when it was with Jake Browning at quarterback, We fall to 2-4, and then, of course, we bring in Joe Flacco. He beats the Pittsburgh Steelers in prime time, and you're like, all right, we're all the way back in. Then we have 2 heart-wrenching losses against the New York Jets and the Chicago Bears, and we're to 3-6, and you're like, oh, the season's dead again. And here you go. You get the news after the bye. Joe Burrow's coming back to practice. And you start piecing it with the optimistic brain, with the most optimistic lens you possibly can on, okay, how can this make sense? And Joe even talked about how the Bengals, really the only odds that the Bengals have of making the postseason is of winning the AFC North. Even though they have started 3-6, they are 2-0 here in the AFC North. And pretty much any road to playing in mid-January revolves around taking care of business against the Baltimore Ravens and taking care of business this Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then, of course, the final week against the Browns. You got to get to 9-8 somehow and likely have to go 5-1 in the AFC North at the minimum to make this all make sense. So you look at this game this Sunday, and once again, the Bengals are playing for some excitement. They're playing for something. And I mentioned this. Before the week started last week and the trade deadline, I was all on board. Fire it all, strip it down. Let's get a new GM in here, a de facto GM, a new head coach. Let's trade Trey Hendrickson. And the Bengals stood by and they said, hey, we're going to continue to try and win this thing. And part of it is probably because there is some legitimate heat behind Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor. They're not going to get fired mid-season, but there is a possibility in which they are competing for their jobs. To where if you go 3-14, you go 4-13, something along those lines, you can legitimately get fired and you're out. And the Bengals are looking in a new direction. But they call on this lifeline. And it's Joe Burrow. And you get the little nudge of excitement once again, like, all right, we get to see the reason that we think this is all possible. Why we think that someday we'll be holding up the Lombardi Trophy here in Cincinnati. Why we think that someday in February, at the end of February, we'll be parading the streets in downtown Cincinnati, tossing beers to our favorite Bengals. And then it all falls apart, and you're going like, well, I mean, it wasn't like the offense was the problem here. And that's a legitimate claim. That's a legitimate criticism of getting excited about this at all. It's not like we were watching this Bengals team and going, well, this reason that we're not winning is because Joe Flacco really isn't cutting it. We were thinking that with Jake Browning. Then they make the trade for Joe Flacco. They bring in Flacco, and this offense once again looks like one of the best offenses in the league, as it has with Joe Burrow for years and years to come. But while that criticism is valid, Joe Burrow's not going to go out there and play safety and start making game-breaking plays. That's a fair criticism, 100%. Point blank is when you have one of the best players on the planet and he is able to come back and he is able to play for your team, regardless of where you're at as an organization, you make that happen. Now you do it that is advantageous for his health. You do it so that it's advantageous for your team. You don't want to throw out a hobbled Joe Burrow when you're sitting at 3-8 and you just lost 4 consecutive games, including the game this Sunday against the Steelers and the game next Sunday against the New England Patriots, who might be the best team in the AFC. You don't throw them out early just to go to the dogs. Don't do that. But if there is even the smallest sliver of hope that the Bengals can make something exciting happen this season, one, it starts this Sunday where they are once again underdogs. They're going on the road, 5.5-point underdogs against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they would need to have hopes and aspirations alive of winning this division and not just saying, oh, if we win our last 6 games and the Ravens lose 5 of their last 6 games, not that kind of aspiration, a serious path to making it to the postseason, which is bleak, but is still viable for the Bengals. Because even though they are entering a 5-game stretch, that is going to be their toughest stretch of the season. When you're down and you're in a 3-6 hole, that's what you need. You need to play the best teams in the league because you got to knock some people off. You gotta beat down the Ravens. You play them twice. You got to beat down the Steelers and sweep them on this season. You've got to have those opportunities to even make this thing work. Now, can they? I don't know. But the proposition of Joe Burrow playing back on Thanksgiving night in front of a national audience and showing to the world what we know is true is that when he's playing, this team, regardless of how bad that defense is, can beat anybody on any given night and is viable enough to, make some noise. Whether you're playing the New York Jets or whether you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs or the Los Angeles Rams or on that night the Baltimore Ravens. Stone, we did a live show yesterday. And we were very excited. I think you were actually more excited than I was. And, of course, it is because Joe Burrow is coming back to practice in front of everyone, right? Ahead of every schedule, every timeline that you saw. But then it kind of sets in like, all right, is this smart? Is this smart? Do you have any trepidation about, bringing back Joe this quick?
I mean, obviously, you're going to be concerned. That's just kind of – and we talked about this early in the year, funnily enough. Like, when you watch Joe Burrow as a Bengals fan, you always kind of hold your breath. That's kind of where you're at, considering the history of injuries that he's had. And I think you earlier were like, you were just kind of at the point after he got through the entirety of the 2024 season healthy where you were just at that point where you could kind of watch him with some freedom and you weren't holding your breath every time he hit the deck or every single time he was sacked. So that's going to be the case for as long as Joe Burrow plays here. You're always going to be watching with some concerns, some bated breath, obviously, when he's about to get hit or when he takes off or you see him take a shot. There's going to be people out there that say it's ridiculous that he comes back, especially if they lose these next two games. But at the end of the day, he's the face of your franchise. You're paying him $275 million. He is an alpha. He's the face of your team. He's a competitor. He wants to come back and play, and I think that says a lot, for how he feels about this team, this organization, this city, and his teammates there as well. So there's going to be people, obviously, if he comes back in a game that technically doesn't mean anything and gets hurt, people are going to absolutely rip the Cincinnati Bengals. But if your quarterback is healthy and he has the ability to go out there and play, I think you go out there and play him, right? If you were in a spot where he hadn't missed any time, and you were sitting here at 3-6, then maybe you lose some games. Do you bench him down the stretch just because you're worried about him getting hurt? No, you let him keep playing. I don't think this should be viewed much differently, to be completely honest with you.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
I need two different numbers from you.
Okay.
I need a percentage chance of, one, if the Bengals win this Sunday, they beat the Steelers this Sunday, what are the percentage chances that Joe Burrow plays on Thanksgiving? And then the second number that I need is if the Bengals lose this weekend, what are the chances that Joe Burrow plays on Thanksgiving?
I think they're the same. The same.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think how the team does will fully impact him playing or not. He did a nice job kind of dancing around some of those questions they asked him. It was Jay Morrison, our guy, how he would feel or what it would mean to him to play in Baltimore on Thanksgiving, and he was very clear that it would mean a lot. They asked him if that was his goal, and then he kind of sat there for a second. He was like, should I say it? Should I say it? Should I say it? And then he was like, yeah, we'll just kind of wait and see. So, I'll say probably 75%. Okay. I think the plan, my guess, I don't have, intel on this. I think the plan is that he comes back for Thursday night, but obviously there can't be any minor setbacks over the course of these next couple of weeks. They got to make sure, the cleats he's got, they got all the equipment figured out for how to handle the toe. So I'll go 75% regardless of what transpires as far as wins and losses for this team over the course of the next 2 weeks.
This is my opinion on the matter. It's undeniable Joe Burrow will play again this year. He will play again this year, regardless of if the Bengals lose their next 3 games, 4, whatever it is. At some point, he will play again this year. He doesn't rush back to injury just to sit on the sideline and go like, well, the season's done. I'm not gonna come back. He's too much of a competitor to do that. It makes sense potentially to do that, but he's too much of a competitor, and everything we've seen from him as a professional football player and really as an amateur football player is that he comes back as soon as he can. He gets hurt a lot, but he does come back frequently early because, I don't know what it is, but I think I saw James Rapine. He put a tweet out that Joe Burrow is a psychopath. And yeah, there's part of that is true. Like he does always put himself in this precarious situation where he does get hurt, but he comes back early. He will play this year. And if they win this Sunday, I think that everything in him is gearing up. You said 75%. I think if they win this Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, you can bump that baby up even higher, above 75%. That he will play on Thanksgiving because he knows that the path, even though it is tough, because at best they'll be 5-6 going into that game. If they beat the Steelers, at worst they'd be 4-7. But you got to remember, they were 4-8 last year and rattled off the 5 wins to finish out the year and finish above 500. If they win this Sunday, I think you can bump that baby up to 90% chance that Joe Burrow plays on Thanksgiving. That being said, if they lose this Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and just going out on a limb and saying they probably lose against the New England Patriots next week, and they go into that game at 3-8, I don't think Joe Burrow plays. I bumped that down to about 25% because I don't think that he is going to rush coming back from an injury just to play for a team with no aspirations going forward. There's no sense in it. That's organizational malpractice, regardless of if your franchise player wants to play. Sometimes as a head coach, sometimes as an organization, sometimes as Duke Tobin or as the owner Mike Brown, you got to sit a guy down and you got to protect him from himself because these are athletes and these are, to play football at a very high level, you've got to have this ruthless aggression attitude. And sometimes you got to protect the players from themselves. And if the Bengals are 3-8, there is no sense in Joe Burrow playing on Thursday Night Football. But Stone, you and I were talking before the show, and you think that there's, I don't want to spoil your take for you, but you think that there is a separate motivating factor, and that is even though Joe, and I don't want to speak for you, you think that Joe wants to play in front of that audience on Thursday Night Football and kind of make his presence back. Hey, I'm Joe Burrow. I'm still right here.
Yeah, 100%. Like, all the greats are like that, right? Like, you can't sit there and tell me Tom Brady wasn't a little bit extra fired up to play in a primetime game, right? You can't tell me that Dak Prescott, one of his favorite parts about playing for the Dallas Cowboys is that he's front and center on Thanksgiving, right? I think Joe Burrow, he wants to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and these are the type of games where you got to show out in. Like, the Cowboys play the Chiefs earlier that day. There's been talk all offseason. That game is going to break all types of records for viewership on Thanksgiving. And I think, if Burrow plays that next game, that night game is going to do some real numbers too there as well. And I think that's probably, look, he wants to get out there and play with his teammates, but it's got to be a little bit extra motivation, right? If that particular week that lined up with, him potentially coming back was a 1:00 game against the Panthers, I don't know if it's the same level of motivation versus on the road, prime time in Baltimore. Historically, you've gone crazy offensively against Baltimore, and it's been crazy games. So, yeah, I think that's a little bit extra added motivation for Burrow.
Yeah, undoubtedly it's interesting. Joe Burrow coming back, and I see everyone in the chat, and they're saying the right things. Most of the people have the same opinion, and it's like this. Why are we rushing back our franchise quarterback when the season is bleak? Why are we doing this? Especially when it feels like, well, it doesn't feel like it. The reason that they're losing these games isn't because of the offense, at least not since Joe Flacco has taken over the quarterback. But just to understand, we oftentimes on this show, and everyone does because, Vegas wins a lot of money. And you can oftentimes look at Vegas and the odds that they put out to understand where you stand in the league. And before the Joe Burrow news came out yesterday, the odds for the Cincinnati Bengals, and shout out, I believe this was Mo Ager that tweeted this out. I didn't do this research personally. But the odds that the Bengals won the AFC North, about 17-18 to 1, plus 1,700, which would insinuate about a 5% chance, which was their playoff odds. News comes out that Joe Burrow is trending in the right direction and could come back as early as Thanksgiving to play the Baltimore Ravens. Well, the odds shoot up to plus 1,100. Still not great, but that's how much of a change. And you can say, and once again, you are right, this offense isn't the reason that this team's currently losing games. Why, to bringing back Joe Burrow, does this team, would you insinuate that this team all of a sudden is a new Cincinnati Bengals and they're going to start rattling off wins left and right? But don't discount what having the face of your organization play once again. He's the hope for us fans. He's the hope for that locker room too. They see him when they're playing. They know they can win. They know they can get it done. They're 2-0 in games he started this year. In fact, Joe Burrow has won the last 7 games he has started. They know that when he's here, they are a better team. And don't ever underestimate force factors in the sport of football. He can bring up the rest of this team, and for whatever reason, guys in the locker room will always matter regardless of the sport, regardless of the organization, your family. Positive leadership, positive people in the room that can inspire hope, that matters. And this Bengals team, if Joe Burrow's out there, all of a sudden come to practice a little more focused. All of a sudden play with a little more skip in the step. All of a sudden play with a little bit more fire behind their rear end. Don't underestimate a force factor like Joe Burrow. And I pray and I hope that the Cincinnati Bengals team can figure out a way to win one of these next 2 games. And it does stink because I'm sitting here on November the 11th, and all I can lament after hearing that big news, after the initial wave of, oh, I'm so excited. Oh, I'm so pumped to go see my favorite football player play once again for my favorite football team, is I just sit there and it makes me sick to my stomach to think, man, if you could have just sealed that win against the Jets. Or, man, if you would have just been able to pull off that heroic comeback and not give up a 57-yard field goal or 57-yard touchdown to Colston Loveland against the Chicago Bears. If they were just able to win one of the last 2 games, we'd be having a much different tone. Or even, heaven forbid, what if they won those last 2 games? And this team's sitting at 5-4, and we just heard that the Savior is coming over the hill soon enough. Or even, what if Jake Browning could have won one of the 4 games before that he started, or one of the 3 games that he started and didn't look like just a complete inept mess the entire time? If they were able just to pull off one more win in the stretch since Joe Burrow has gone down, we'd be singing a much different tune here today. Instead, we're talking about the viability of if it makes sense that one of the greatest players on the planet comes back when he'd be ready to come back. That's where we're at as a team. But I'll say this. If you're looking for positivity, look no further once again to the betting lines. And while I already mentioned that their odds to win the division started at plus 17, plus 1,800, now they're down to plus 1,100. The Bengals' odds, after having 2 of the more gut-wrenching losses that you'll see on the road to win this Sunday. So they're going to Pittsburgh. The spread is shorter than what it was when we welcome in Pittsburgh at our home field. It's 5.5. And as we've seen, we lost to the Jets as 6.5-point favorites. This team, this offense, truly believe that they can beat anybody, especially a floundering Pittsburgh team that, once again, didn't look good. Now their defense or their offense looked completely inept. Aaron Rodgers had one of the worst games of his career. And knowing our defense, he'll be right back on the horse and looking like, what is he, a 5-time MVP? Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP Aaron Rodgers. But it really does come down. A lot of this season comes down to this Sunday. We could talk about it all the time. Is it a must win? Is it a can't lose? Gotta have it, whatever verbiage, whatever cliche, whatever vernacular you want to attach to this game. If you want Joe Burrow to make any noise when he comes back, and he is going to come back, it's just a question of when. If you want to make any noise whatsoever, you got to take care of business this Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because even Joe Burrow can't overcome 3-8. You got to be able to take one of the next 2 games, and preferably the one this Sunday is much better, is much more important because it is a division rival. Because you are able to make some noise if you can get them. Do you think that the betting lines that changed, do you think that's just people, oh, Joe Burrow's back, start betting it? Do you think or do you think Vegas actually believes that with Joe Burrow coming back, this team with, the Steelers playing as poorly as they have played, And with the Ravens, still, even though they got a couple easy games, they did start 1-5, and they got a tough end of the season schedule. Do you think there's any validity that Joe Burrow can actually will us into the postseason by winning the AFC North?
Vegas always knows, man. They always know. And, earlier this year, and look, hand up, I was wrong on Baltimore. Vegas was sitting there trying to tell us they're going to be right back in this thing. Right. And now you look and you're like, oh, here's Baltimore. They're right here. They're probably going to win this division. So Vegas always knows. And, Craig made this point yesterday on the live show. With Burrow just coming back to practice, that provides a spark. That provides a juice. Now, is it going to result in the defense magically playing better? Probably not. No. But, I absolutely think, regardless of how bad the defense is and how good the offense has been without Joe Burrow, I think you're clearly in a better spot now to potentially make the playoffs. All Joe Burrow does at the end of seasons, along with Zach Taylor as well, is win games. So, we'll see. The thing about Joe is he's always – gotten out to kind of slow starts during the year. The question is, now that he's coming back from injury, is he going to get off to like a slow start as if it were a week 1, week 2 game? Because obviously the Bengals can't afford that. But if he picks up late November, early December Joe, here we go. And, if the defense get off the field 3 times, you're going to win a lot of games. So, obviously they have a much better chance with Joe Burrow, despite the fact that the offense has been great without him.
Wouldn't that be a kick in the groin? You beat the Steelers this Sunday with Joe Flacco, who, by the way, is banged up. He's progressing. According to everything, he's going to play this Sunday against the Steelers. And then you even, at home, beat the New England Patriots, who maybe at that point will be on are they on a 7-game winning streak at this point? They'd be on an 8-game winning streak. And you beat the Patriots at home, and you get to 5-6, and Joe Burrow's coming back. And just because we've seen Joe Burrow start slow time and time again, he's only played 6 quarters this season. Just doesn't quite look like the same offense that we've now seen with Joe Flacco. I mean, that would just be a gut punch, but it'd be one I'd willingly take, because if we win the next 2 games, the season is still viable, is still capable, especially looking at those last 3 games that the Bengals play, which is against the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and the Browns. All 3 of those teams won't be playing for anything at all, and hopefully the Bengals will be playing for something at those last 3 games. All right, Joe Burrow coming back. Before I get into college basketball, Stone, there was big news that came out yesterday. Once again, we've talked about gambling now more than I anticipated coming into today's show. And the news was about the Ortiz and the Emmanuel Clase, that they are facing, decades in prison based off of what they did on. They were, what's the right word? Defrauding their pitches. Because obviously on these betting apps, you can bet if, the first pitch of the inning is going to be a ball, or the first pitch of the inning is going to be a strike. And they were taking kickbacks from their buddies on throwing pitches. I mean, the videos, you guys have all seen the videos of Emmanuel Clase spiking pitches to start an inning. Doesn't have to ruin his save opportunity. Can still be the same pitcher, but hey, to this batter, first batter in the inning, spike one. Throw one away. And the news now came out that these sports gambling companies are going to limit. They're still going to offer those propositions on the first pitches of innings, or pitch by pitch micro betting as they call it. But they're going to cap it at $200. And this is honestly a perfect solution. This is a perfect solution to where everyone can come home a little happy. These sports books can continue to keep offering micro bets to the end user. If you want to bet, if that's your jam, you like betting on, hey, is the next pitch going to be over or under 92 miles an hour? Or, hey, is this next pitch going to be put in play? Is it going to be a ball? Is it going to be a strike? How many pitches? Those micro bets will still be offered, but they cap it at $200 to limit the ability of defrauding, cheating, and any scandals that this could happen. And I'm just here to warn you, as I've said when we've talked about gambling on this show again, there will continue to be stories and scandals coming out about betting and how these players are affecting the betting markets. Because whether you guys like it or not, these players have friends and family members that can get in their ear and go like, hey, you don't have to throw the save, Emmanuel. You don't have to give up 4 runs, but I can bet on that first pitch. If you just throw that first pitch a ball, I can put a lot of money and we can all get rich off this. When you're the 6th guy on In these certain college games, this Big 12 game where you're the 10th team in the Big 12 and there's a betting odd on the 6th guy off the bench and, he can just bet the under today, throw some coin on it. That's going to continue to happen. And these leagues and these sports books and the nation, really, the federal law, will continue to push for solutions that make the most sense. And this one, I think, hits home on everything that makes sense. You can still do those micro betting. And honestly, if you are upset that you can't bet on more than $200 on these micro bets pitch by pitch, you might want to call the number. But it's able to limit the incentive on these players defrauding the system, defrauding the game, defrauding themselves. And we will continue to see measures push like this, and we will continue to hear stories about these players, especially at the NBA, where it's the easiest of all the sports to control your outcomes on these player prop lines. Me and Stone talked about it a few weeks ago. There's several different routes, whether it be you only offer positive outcomes. You can't offer, hey, under 8 points, or hey, under 150 passing yards, or hey, I'm going to throw a ball here, or hey, I'm going to give up 2 hits, or I'm going to walk 2 guys. All of those things could possibly happen. It's just going to be interesting to see how these sports books in this nation, the federal body, goes about policing these scandals. I don't know if you had a take on that, Stone. I don't know if you had an opinion on these sports gambling markets limiting micro bets in the baseball pitch by pitch to under $200, if you think that's a good thing or if you have an opinion at all on any of this.
It's probably a good thing. I mean, there's some real degenerates out there, man. I mean, you can bet on basically anything here at this point except college player props here in the state of Ohio. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't get caught up in that. I'd be lying if I said there weren't a few nights in college where we sat down and said, all right, let's see if this is a ball or a strike.
Right,
but
it's fun. It's a little fun, but you throw $5 on it, right?
Right, yeah. And, it's funny because I have some friends that are Guards fans, and they were just at Clase for however long, and now this comes out, and it's like, wow, that's, pretty bad. It was the guy couldn't throw a first pitch strike. So, I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I'm very much over-under, and then spreads, money lines, maybe an occasional player prop on NFL Sunday. But, it's probably a good thing, right? I mean, if you're betting on literally every pitch, like there's a way where you can, rig it if you're playing. And it's kind of a mess for not just baseball, but for all sports as well. And there's controversy in the UFC right now, which is really hard for me to wrap my head around. It's one thing to throw a ball. It's one thing to go out there in the octagon and willingly get your butt whipped, right? So, I mean, it's kind of a mess here with gambling. I wouldn't say I have a strong take either way. I'm just kind of sitting here watching it play out, and we'll see. There's a lot of big-time decisions that need to be made in order to, keep the integrity levels high with, the product that we love, and that, of course, is live sports.
Yeah, it's the individual sports that are the most damning, because even, like, the reason we talk a lot about basketball and players defrauding the game is because it's the easiest sport to do so. Like, my total's 8 points, I'm going to shoot a lot, or I'm not going to shoot at all and miss on purpose, or I'm going to turn the ball over, whatever it may be. It's hard to do that in baseball, to be quite honest, unless you're the pitcher, unless you're doing quite literally what Emmanuel Clase was doing. But it's been funny you mentioned the UFC. I mean, as long as sports gambling's been a thing in the shady alleys, these fights, these UFC boxing matches, they've been rigged as long as we've known them. I mean, that just is what it is. You take the fight, someone in the back alley says, hey, I want you to take a fall. Here's this money. Here's this lump sum of cash. Can you take the fall today? Don't be surprised if sports like tennis, this individual sport where, me and Stone are playing and, the bet is it's going to go 4.5 sets or whatever it is. And, I could beat him in 4, but I'll take the fall on one of those sets. I'll still win the match, but, I'll take a fall on one. These individual sports are where it's going to be the biggest problem. And it's just going to be really interesting because it's the genie's out of the bottle. It's going to continue to happen. How are we going to navigate forward and continue to make this all? I do think it's interesting. You mentioned, you're in college and you and your buddies are together and I'll throw $5 on the next pitch if it's going to be over 93 miles, because I've done that too. Yeah. Admittedly, I've done that too with my friends. Now that the limit's $200, obviously college kids don't have $200 to be thrown around. It'd be interesting to see if you can get your buddies on board and be like, "Hey, you want to max out the bet? You want to max out the next pitch?" I wonder if that even going to happen. But like I said, if you're consistently throwing $200 on pitch outcomes, then maybe it's for your best interest that they have limited these bets to that capacity. Maybe it's for your best interest. All right, last night, Xavier Musketeers played Santa Clara at the Cintas Center and suffered the worst loss at Cintas Center in over a decade. And it wasn't to a Big East opponent. It wasn't to multiple-time champion UConn. It wasn't to his dad in St. John's. It was to Santa Clara, who I just checked the roster today, did not have Steve Nash on the roster. And this is what we've heard now coming out of Xavier's camp. I'm obviously a Xavier fan. In the first year of Richard Pitino, ever since Sean Miller left for Texas, in the first year of Richard Pitino, there's multiple reports saying this is going to be a lean year from Xavier. And through, 3 games, it's proven to be true. To where Xavier looks destined to be sub 500 for just the third time in over 40 years of Xavier basketball. A few years ago, they were sub 500. In the mid-90s, they were sub 500. Likely going to do that. Reports coming out, they might be the worst team in the Big East. We'll see. We'll see. But I just want to be on record as saying this is not an indication of how the Richard Pitino era is going to go over here in Xavier. In fact, what it smells out is more than likely just the state of the program in the wake of another Sean Miller exit and Sean Miller leaving no contingency plan for this program as he left, especially in the current era of the NIL, the transfer portal, and all those things. This team is going to have a really, really tough season. But please don't think that this is going to describe how good of a job Richard Pitino. Now you hope that it's not so bad of a season that you can't overcome it, because we've seen this happen in sports, especially at the college level before, to where one truly awful season could derail any positive momentum. And Xavier, since Sean Miller took it over, had positive momentum, making the Sweet 16 a couple years ago, making the tournament last year, winning a game in the tournament. You hope that you can get back to the same thing of why we talk about Cintas Center being one of the toughest places to play. Why we talk about the Cintas Center, why we talk about Xavier on the pedestal, and even though it's a small private college, that they are regarded as, a great basketball school, because they are, with a great fan base, because they do have a great fan base. It's going to be a lean year. It's going to be a tough year. But we've seen the Muskies go through this before, and you hope Richard Pitino is up to the task. Just don't start grading the way that Richard Pitino grades every game. Just don't start grading the job that Richard Pitino is doing based off this first season here at the Cintas Center. And we'll see what happens in that game in December. I know Stone's been scared all offseason about that game in December because that Bear Kittens team doesn't seem to play well in Norwood. So we'll see about that. Speaking of UC, we're now 44 minutes into the show, and I haven't given my full pitch to get you to go to the game tonight. Right. Stone, you're a young kid.
Yeah.
UC, Dayton, two local great basketball programs, and you can get there for just $33.
Yeah.
For just $33. What time's tip? 7?
7.
7. It's not even a late tip.
Yeah.
It's a good tip.
Yeah.
Why won't you go to this game?
I love how this is your conversation topic about the game. But look, I said at the top, I will be there it's only a matter of time before I'm at a UC game. The thing about basketball, and I've said this before on the show, baseball, get me in, sit me anywhere, I'll enjoy it. Football, get me in, sit me anywhere, I'll enjoy it. But basketball, I think, in order to really enjoy it, you got to have good seats. So you sitting there throwing this $33 number around, That's not good enough. You got to be down closer to the floor, and next thing you know, you're spending triple digits, and I'm not going to do that here on a Tuesday, November 11th for UC and Dayton. I'll sit there, which, by the way, it's a crime. This game's on ESPN Plus, not even on national TV. But, I don't think – look, when Big 12 play starts, I'll get down to fifth third. And it's great. In fact, it's better than the Cintas setting.
Oh, come on.
And I'm looking forward to getting down there. But, probably not tonight. Why? Hey, you going? You want to go? Me and you? You'll buy the tickets?
You and me. We'll go. We do have a super chat from Nate. Been a member for 20 months. Been a nut cutter for 20 months. He says, the University of Dayton Flyers play UC tonight. This is in all caps, so I'm going to get really, really loud. The Smear Cats have no chance against the Anthony Grant-led Dayton Flyers. Letang, Bennett, Jones, Connor, Montgomery. Get ready to learn Dayton Flyer. Does that scare you at all?
Well, one, you sit here and act like I'm a UC alum. You saw my shirt yesterday. Love and honor, right? I'm a MAC guy, Miami guy. So, but yeah, I always pull
you root for Alabama. You talk about Alabama football all the time.
You weren't supposed to tell everybody about that.
What?
No.
You're an Alabama fan? Has that been a secret?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, well.
Because I spend time talking about them on my show, and then because Jacob apparently was a Bama fan, right?
He was. He was a Bama alum, though.
Okay. Yeah,
he's actually an Ohio State fan, Bama alum.
Okay, yeah. Because I was getting like, Jacob 2.0 comments when I talk about the Tide. But, yeah, the cat's out of the bag, I guess, Alabama fan. But, yeah, I've always pulled for UC, particularly the basketball program. Football, I'm not in on Scott Satterfield, but I've always liked Wes Miller, but he's got to make the dang tournament here at this point. It's been, they haven't made it since Cronin? That was a long time ago. So
Brandon would have made it the COVID year. They would have made it that season, but obviously that did not count. In fact, I think there was only one tournament game played that before COVID broke down, and it was the first round of the Big East tournament that Xavier needed to win to get into the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they lost.
Right.
So that was the only game that happened there that COVID year. But you always talk about your UC Bear Kittens, and I was just trying to pressure you to go because this is going to be a great atmosphere. It's going to be great. I'm glad. I believe it was a home and home, but the home was they played at Heritage Bank Arena when they'd never played at UD Arena. You ever been to UD Arena?
Oh yeah. UD Arena is great. They've
for
sold
a college
out every
game or just for high school.
No, yeah, I've seen the Flyers there. They've sold out every game for how long? It's been a long time, I think. Which Nick Kirby, by the way, says we could get me credentialed into the game. Is he joking about that?
Oh yeah. College basketball. College sports in general, it's not too hard to get credentialed. We had reporters do UD games. We've had reporters get credentialed for UC. We can send one in if you want to go. If you got credentialed, would you go
tonight?
Yeah.
If I got credentialed in future games, I'd go all the time.
Okay, so you're not going tonight, regardless.
That just means I'm going solo, though, right? Unless you get credentials. Then we go together. But
I can't go to a UC Bearcats game because I'm a Xavier
fan. You don't like
fan.
Fifth Third? Fifth Third's great, man.
Fifth Third was a dump before it was renovated.
Yeah,
it was a
fair.
dump.
Yeah.
And it is really nice now.
Yeah.
But it was a dump before it was renovated. I forget how long ago. We've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ain't going down there. Kill me.
Yeah. If we get like 2 credentials, then
too late for tonight.
Bring someone. Yeah, that's fine. But I'm hesitant to go solo. Do you like solo sporting events? You ever done that?
Well, when I worked for the newspaper, when I worked up at the Van Wert Times Bulletin, I got credentials to the Reds games and would go quite frequently. I went like 3 times quite frequently. What a misuse of terms there. But I go to Cubs games all the time by myself.
Really?
Because I've said this before. I must be an unbearable fan because my family, friends, everyone, they don't let me talk about the Cubs. And I buy tickets for people, and they refuse to come with me to Cubs-Reds games. So, I've gone to – have you been to – you go to sport events solo?
No, I never have. I don't know if I would like that. Maybe – I definitely wouldn't do a football game, but maybe a Reds game. I think there's some like a businessman special, like a 12:30 game when not very many people there. That could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
By yourself, but that would probably be the only time that I would.
You know, remember a few weeks ago, now we're just off the rails, just chit-chatting.
That's fine.
Remember a few weeks ago, Joe Flacco had that quote where he was talking about, he's like, I love going out to dinner by myself and sitting at the bar, and I really enjoy just being there, which also, what were the chances Joe Flacco left that press conference, immediately got a call from his wife and was like, you don't want to hang out with, like, you don't want to be at home anymore? You don't want to spend time with us? You'd rather be by yourself? Because I could almost guarantee that was the case. But I enjoy that. I go to dinners by myself from time to time. I don't feel like I get that vibe from you, just going out and sitting at the local eatery by yourself for a dinner from time to time.
Well, I go to our spot. I was going once a week by myself as you stopped coming with me. But no, I don't mind a lunch by yourself at all. I like that. That place up the street, it's great. Yeah,
I always had the take when I go to movies by myself sometimes. And I would always have to take, like, people would be like, that's weird. And I was like, why is going to a movie by yourself weird? I'm not talking to you.
Right.
Like, in fact, it's frowned upon for me to have any social interaction with you while I'm watching the movie. So why would I go with a person just to have no social interaction? Football games and everything like that. That's a little different. Solo sporting events, I'd have to be a big fan to do a solo sporting event, like I am with the Cubs. And I can't ever imagine going to a Bengals game solo dolo unless I was just given one ticket and they're just like, here's one ticket. I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the game. Thanks for the ticket. But I can't imagine offering my hard-earned cash. But a big game tonight nonetheless, UC Dayton. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Paul Frischner's going to be on the show. We're going to talk about Xavier. We're going to talk kind of the recap because he does the rebound rundown of this UC Dayton game. We're going to talk about Louisville, Kentucky tomorrow. Paul's actually, he's got another game up at Hinkle Fieldhouse. He'll be calling that on ESPN Plus, the Butler game. And also we're going to have Jay Morrison on the show tomorrow in the back half of the hour to talk about the Bengals and kind of the topics that we talked about today when it comes to what's the validity of Joe Burrow coming back for Thanksgiving? What's the validity of, even if this season is done, of Joe Burrow coming back early from injury? He's going to play at some point this year. It's just kind of a question of when. How motivated is he to come back if the Bengals fall down to 3-8, which they will be close to touchdown underdogs in each of their next two games? Can they scrap one? Can they win two after losing the two just horrific games to the Jets and the Chicago Bears? But we just finished up week 10 of the NFL season here in the final 8 minutes. I did offer you a couple buy or sells, which we'll leave the rest for the rest this week, but we can get into a couple Stone Shields without further ado. Let's do some buy or sells, recapping this NFL week and kind of all the news that's been around.
All right, first one, Jackson Dart, Giants franchise quarterback or 2025 bust bait?
So here's the thing. Jackson Dart has been playing very well. I mean, there's a lot of reason if you're a New York Giants fan to think that you've got the franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart because he's played well. The problem is he's playing too careless at this point. He's now been in concussion protocol in I think 4 of his starts. He's gone to the tent in 4 of his starts now. You just simply cannot do that if you're going to be the face of a franchise. Sure, it's spunky and it's cool for a game to game, and if you're in the playoffs, go for it. Go for it. But here we are when you are going to be the face of a franchise, and I am buying that Jackson Dart is a franchise quarterback. But you cannot play the way that he has played. He's got to be able to play, and maybe it's just not in his game, but he's got to be able to conserve yourself because you cannot be putting yourself in precarious positions time and time again. Your thoughts on Jackson Dart as a franchise QB?
Totally agree. I think he is. I think sometimes you can see it early, and very early when he got that first start, it was like, oh, yep, he's got that it factor, right? People talk about that all the time. Like, well, what is the it factor? I don't really know, but he's got it. And Yeah, I think a lot of it, too, I agree with what you're saying. Dayball, which we'll talk about him in a second, was calling a lot of quarterback power stuff. And it's like, well, what are you doing, man? Like, he's your quarterback. Stop doing that. And it's not like he's some huge guy either. So I had some questions in regards to the play calling. But, yeah, you can't be reckless like that, especially at this point in your career, right? Especially when it's not a postseason type of game. That's how you age very, very quickly. And even if you don't have a serious injury, which he's concussed, to me, that's a pretty serious injury, you're going to wear down quicker, and you're not going to be able to play for a long time in this league. So he's got to figure that out, or he's going to have some issues. And he's not like the biggest guy in the world. Like, he's big, right?
Right, like Josh Allen.
Right, he can kind of get away with it a little bit more. Jackson Dart can't.
Well, that's what we talked about Jaden Daniels last year, is he was taking those hits. He was playing fantastic. In fact, Jaden Daniels' rookie season last year is one of, if not the best rookie season that I ever remember watching. It's on par with the Andrew Luck rookie season. And here we are, he's banged up all the time. In year 2, because of the way that he was playing. And this league is full of the biggest, fastest, and strongest men in the world. Even the best athletes, even the most suited guys, and Jackson Dart seems to be pretty good. Even him, you can't take hits at the level that he's taking right now. So he's got to figure that out. He's the franchise quarterback, though. I believe the next one was about Brian Daboll.
Yes, buy or sell. Giants made the wrong move in firing Daboll mid-season.
So I think you and I will have similar opinions on this. And I think Brian Daboll, firing him mid-season, quite honestly, doesn't make a lick of sense. I'm buying this. And the reason I'm buying this is because not only do I think that firing a coach midseason more often than not, even though I was just calling for Zach Taylor to get fired, more often than not is the wrong call. But it's pretty clear that you've got this franchise quarterback, or at least a guy that you're going to hang your hat on for the next few years. You're going to give a go at being the franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart. And he's pretty clearly got a pretty good relationship with Brian Daboll. So why are you going to completely stunt his growth in his rookie year by firing the guy that he's got a really good relationship with? By firing an offensive mind like Brian Daboll, who, whether he deserves to be fired or not, that's not what I'm discussing. I'm telling you at midpoint, it doesn't make a lick of sense. Because now, all right, Jackson Dart, he's making waves. People were getting excited about him. Oh, now he's got to learn something new. Now he's going to learn from a new play caller. I don't know. It doesn't make a lick of sense to me, Stone.
I'm kind of going to dance around this. My biggest thing is you can't be half in, half out. Right? You want to fire Daboll, fine, but the GM's got to go too. And that's not what New York did. They're keeping Joe Shane, which to me makes no sense. You either keep them both or you get rid of them both. What has Joe Shane done that is productive? Well, he traded Saquon Barkley. That wasn't good. He paid Daniel Jones. Well, that wasn't good. Has he hit on a few draft picks? Sure. Was the Abdul Carter? We talk about Duke Tobin all the time. Oh, you picked Jamar Chase. Congrats. The Giants, you picked Abdul Carter. Congrats, right? So I don't get this half in, half out stuff. And, yeah, to your point, I mean, Daboll, Jackson Dart was his guy. That's who he wanted. And Shane went up and traded for the pick and, selected him in the first round. So my biggest thing is you can't be half in, half out. I don't understand it. The Giants have done this several times throughout their history, and it doesn't work. They do it for about 2 years, and then they fire the GM, and then they pick another new coach there as well. So I don't know why ownership hasn't learned from their previous mistakes, but we'll spend some more time on during my show at the end of the show talking about this. But, yeah, I don't get the half in, half out. Speaking
of spending a few minutes on the back half of the show, the one thing that you come to Off the Bench for is our takes on the association, is our takes on the NBA. That's what we've always been known for. It's what we'll always be known for, is how great of takes that we have on the NBA. I just saw breaking news on my phone, and I'm clearing up. Nico Harrison out as the GM of the Dallas Mavericks 11 games into the season. And, man, I don't know if I've ever seen as much backlash from a trade as I saw when the Dallas Mavericks traded away Luka Doncic. And they get lucky. They luck out, get the best name in the draft. And here they are 11 games in. Don't look viable. The Dallas Mavericks do not look viable. They're 3-8. And Nico Harrison is out. Man, he had, I guess, 11 games to save his save his career. But when you make as much noise as you do, that was just part of it. When you make as much noise as he did last year by trading Luka, and it could all work out in the long run. They didn't think they were going to get the first overall bid. They didn't think they were going to get Cooper Vlad, but they did. And unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, Nico Harrison's out. It's kind of a surprising move happening there in the NBA. I think we've talked about this before. You're a Bulls guy, right?
Yep.
Your college friend was a Bulls fan, if I recall that.
Yep.
Right? All right. Just checking in on crossing all the T's. Stone, thank you so much for being here for the 10 o'clock hour. I'll see you tonight at Fifth Third.
You coming?
What if I get front row ticks?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you just don't want to go in if there's no not a good viewing experience?
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, it is. All right, Stone Shield Show coming up. He's going to have Keegan Nicholson on the show tomorrow. We're going to have Jay Morrison and Paul Fritchner on a loaded Wednesday edition of Off the Bench. I'll see you guys around. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. Give us a like, subscribe, all the good stuff. See you guys.
What is going on? We are live. We are here on a Tuesday. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us through Off the Bench. It is the Stone Shield Show. Appreciate everyone tuning in here on a Tuesday morning. Plenty of stuff to get to here on the show. Obviously, Monday Night Football last night. I stayed up for it. I don't necessarily regret staying up for it. It was close there at the end. Joe Buck said this at half. It's a 0-0 game, but it was kind of an entertaining 0-0 game, and not good for the Green Bay Packers. They lose 10-7. Philly finds a way to win. Some explosive runs there in the second half. Really nice play by Saquon Barkley in a one-on-one situation. He makes a guy miss. And ultimately, it later results in a Devontae Smith touchdown. The Packers go right down the field and score, but had some opportunities there to run the 2-minute, 3-minute offense and unable to capitalize there. Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, and company. We'll talk about that game a little bit. Also, Keegan Nickerson is stopping by in about 5-6 minutes. From Bearcat Journal. Looking forward to that conversation with Keegan. Big game tonight for the Cats. They're 2-0. And they play Dayton tonight. Obviously, that's technically not a Power 4 game, right? But Wes Miller says, no, not so fast. We're treating this like it is. And they should, right? The past 2 years, obviously, has been a neutral site at Heritage Bank. They're split, one in favor of UC, one in favor of Dayton. 5.5-point advantage as far as the spread goes for the Bearcats, and we'll see. Looking forward to that conversation with Keegan here in a matter of moments. Also, the news of yesterday, the news in this town right now, Joe Burrow, of course, returns to practice yesterday, kind of out of nowhere, right? I don't think, many people thought we would be seeing him on November 10th return to practice. And, obviously I wasn't at practice, but seeing him run around there on the field and, make those throws looked pretty good, to be honest with you. And it seems like the goal is for him to come back Thanksgiving night on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. He didn't come out and say that, but it kind of, with his silence when Jay Morrison asked him that question, it kind of feels like that is the goal as far as Joe Burrow. So we'll spend some time, obviously, talking about that. Probably could talk about that for a whole hour, but we're not going to do that here on the show. Also, it's a Tuesday morning. That means NFL Power Rankings. We do it every Tuesday morning. Feel pretty good about our list from last week. Not many drastic changes. Try to tell everybody the Patriots were for real, so they're going to be at the top of that again. And then we'll see where the Rams and the Eagles and the Seahawks and the Lions all fall in. The Chiefs, of course, did not play. We'll see if they're still in my top 10. And Denver, what do you do about Denver? They've only lost 2 games, but they have not looked good, particularly on the offensive side of the football. We'll do that. Also, we talked about it at the end of Off the Bench. Brian Daboll has been fired by the New York Giants, and I've got some questions regarding that there as well. But let's start with Monday Night Football. Packers lose, Eagles win 10-7 Monday Night Primetime. Obviously kind of felt like this was a huge game, an awesome game. We've had some good, we've had some bad primetime games. I mean, there's 3 of them a week, and then you have the morning game sometimes when you're international. So it's tough to always deliver, I guess. But I think more so than not, these primetime games have delivered. And as I said at the top, it's 10-7. Usually you think, oh, that's a painful watch. Not really. There was some excitement. They were moving the ball. You had some fumbles there. And, Green Bay, Matt LaFleur just not able to kind of get on the same page offensively. And Jordan Love, I've been a big Jordan Love guy. Thought it was the right decision for Green Bay to go out there and pay him. I think he's the franchise guy. I think he's going to be there for a long time. And I'm hesitant to say the word regressing, right? We talked about that with Bo Nix. He's clearly regressing. I don't know if Jordan Love necessarily is regressing, but he's not playing well, right? I think he made some throws there in the second half, and he made some, good decisions there in the second half. Ultimately, wasn't able to execute the 3-minute, right? All he needed was to get in field goal range, an opportunity to go down there and tie that game, and he wasn't able to do so. And there's certainly some question marks about that. Now, there's some people that are going to sit here and criticize Matt LaFleur. He deserves a lot of criticism, but I don't think this is a situation where he's on the hot seat, right? To be completely honest with you, he's done a lot of winning. What he did with Aaron Rodgers when he first got here, helping Rodgers win those couple of MVPs, speaks volumes. The Packers, they kind of were ahead of schedule there with Jordan Love. It's like, oh, boom, here's Jordan Love. Boom, we're in the playoffs. Oh, we're going to win a playoff game there in the process as well. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, to be completely honest with you. But, some people are going to sit here and say, maybe he's not the right guy to lead things in Green Bay from a head coaching perspective. And I think, we'll see how the remainder of the season plays out to this point, to the end of the year. But I just think that's kind of a premature thing to say here at this point. When you go all in on a roster like the Green Bay Packers did, they traded for Micah Parsons. There goes 2 number 1 picks. You go all in. You don't blow the thing up right after, 1 year. I don't think you do that. Matt LaFleur has shown he's very capable as head coach and play caller, but they're kind of stuck in the mud right now. You lose to the Panthers, right? You lose at home against the Eagles there as well. That's another element to this, losing some games at home. And, they deserve a lot of criticism. I don't think they're as good as I thought initially, but they still have a long way to go as it relates to the rest of their season. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about this later on in today's show because I think it's, another impressive win for Philadelphia where it's like, you know what, didn't look pretty necessarily, but they found a way to get it done and get a victory and improve their record. So we'll spend a little bit more time talking about that in a second. But I do want to welcome in our guest. It's a big-time basketball game tonight at Fifth Third Arena. Our guest, of course, is Keegan Nickerson of Bearcat Journal. Keegan, can you hear me? And thanks for stopping by. I know it's a busy day for you, and I appreciate a couple of minutes here on the show.
Yeah, I got you. You got me. I got kind of a janky setup in a parking spot on the street on Ludlow Avenue. So I'm trying to make it work.
Oh, we appreciate you making some time. Thank you so much for that. So UC favored by 5.5 points at home. And I look at that line, and I was a little bit surprised personally. What's your kind of take on the line at 5.5?
Yeah, I like UC at that spot. I think they're 4 inches bigger than Dayton on average. Dayton hasn't been a good rebounding team. Got beat on the boards against UMBC in a narrow victory. I think they beat them 77-71. And Dayton's kind of biggest guys, Jacob Connor, and then there's a Frenchman who I'm not even going to try to say his name to not butcher it. But they're averaging, I think, 2 rebounds and 6.5 rebounds respectively. So I think I love UC. I love the talent that they have. And I think that they'll be able to kind of control the boards, get some second chance points, and then you'll be able to get a victory. So I had kind of said beforehand, anything over 8, I was going to be comfortable with, or at 8 at least. So I like them at a 5.5.
You wrote about this for Bearcat Journal. Javon Bennett, probably Dayton's best player, and in the age of transfer portal and the NIL, usually you have guys switching teams all the time. But this is year number 3 for Bennett at Dayton, and UC kind of has struggled against good guards so far early this year. What are you trying to do with him defensively? Are you putting Buck Harris on him? Is it Day Thomas? Is it a mixture of both of those guys? And like you talked about in your piece, the guards kind of have hurt UC through 2 games. What's your biggest concern, I guess, going up against a player like Bennett?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an issue. It's been kind of weird with how they've managed it because obviously Sincere Harris missed some of the, I think it was the Western Carolina game with a wrist issue. And then you put Day Thomas on those guys. But Wes Miller's also said he hasn't liked how a lot of his guys have executed on defense. So I think you put Sincere Harris on Javon Bennett, even though he's going to come off the bench and be the first guy off the bench. And then see if you can shut him down. But I think he scored 4 points against UC last year, 2 the year before, on 1 for 10 shooting from the field. So maybe there's a bit of a kryptonite that UC has against Javon Bennett. Not exactly sure. But, yeah, I think you put Buck Harris on him and say, we're going to put our best guy on your best guy and see what happens. But you can't allow 25-plus points to every team's best player, or you're going to have some issues unless you can really lock down the rest of them, win on the boards, and kind of control it from there.
You talk about the second chance opportunities for UC potentially in this game. I think a lot of us have been maybe a little bit disappointed with their presence on the glass through a couple of weeks. You talk about the advantage as far as size and height and certainly athleticism there as well. Do you think they'll be able to get that cleaned up and really out-rebound this Dayton team? Because if they can find themselves in a situation where they're making have a lot of second chance opportunities, it's probably going to set them up rather nicely. So do you think they'll get that kind of fixed on the boards tonight?
That's a great question, and I can't confidently give you a yes. I think with how much roster turnover there was, there's some chemistry that has to be built that you can only build through playing under the bright lights, playing those actual games. Exhibitions, you're just not going to get it. It's a completely different dynamic. Practice, you're not going to get it. So I don't know if 2 games against kind of those lower level teams, the mid majors, is gonna help much. I think this game will build a lot of that chemistry. It could be through a loss, and having to kind of rebound and, move on and fix those things, or it could be through a win where they give themselves a lot of confidence and prove that they're a good team. So my whole thing on this team, when people ask me how they're going to be for the entire season, is I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I think last year's team was more talented on paper, but it didn't work out. I think this year's team fits from a roster perspective in terms of the puzzle pieces. I think it fits better. So I don't really know. I think that this team is just a wild card year in and year out. So they could get out rebounded tonight, and it could be a big problem, like I said in that piece, or they could absolutely destroy Dayton on the boards and just kind of assert their will. I think that the players will feed off of an actual sold out, like Fifth Third Arena crowd that they haven't seen through the first two games. So that's another thing that I'd look for as well.
From a shooting perspective, going into this year, I kind of looked at the roster and said, oh, they have a chance to be a really good shooting team this year. And in years past, I feel like they haven't had multiple guys that could hurt you. Obviously, you had Lukosius there for a while, but beyond that, it wasn't a ton. C.J. Frederick, of course, there as well. But it didn't shoot the ball particularly well against Georgia State. And you're going to have some games like that. Wes alluded to that after the game. But from a shooting perspective, who are some guys that you would like to step up and make some big-time shots, and do you think you'll see an improvement as far as that goes tonight?
When I think of shooting, I think of three guys. I think of Shone, Jalen Celestine, and Jordy Rodriguez. Those are the three guys that you're going to call on to shoot those threes, and they need to make them. The one other guy that I think is interesting is Baba Miller, because he's shown the ability to convert from beyond the arc pretty consistently throughout his career at Florida State and Florida Atlantic, and when he's played overseas with Spain. So, but the thing with him is, with Jalen Haynes out, he's kind of asserted himself down low. Like, he's driving to the hoop, he's drawing a bunch of fouls, and he's finishing at the rim. So I don't really want to take him out of what's working, at least what's working against mid-majors, which it's a completely different thing when you get in the Big 12. But I would focus on those three that I mentioned before: Shone, Jalen Celestine, and Jordy Rodriguez. Jordy has really surprised me, and my boss, Chad Brundle, we kind of talked about it at the game. We think he's going to be really good. He could be one of the players that surprises a bunch of guys, because you don't really know with those foreign guys coming in from playing from those leagues. Like, it's a really big adjustment. And it's constantly, maybe they're playing in a tougher league and it's going to be an easy adjustment. Maybe they're playing in an easy league. How do they kind of transition? I love how he plays. I love how aggressive he is. I think those three, and then Kirk Kreese is another one who I think can really shoot it, who should play better.
You touched on Baba Miller there for a second. I think coming into the year, you had these new pieces, you had a lot of talent, but who was going to be that one? I think every good team, you can have a lot of good players, but you need that guy that, when you're taking the final shot or you need a bucket, you need somebody to step up. To me, through two games, it looks like it is Baba Miller, and he, like you said, he can shoot it a little bit. Obviously, he can get to the rim, he can defend, kind of a Swiss Army knife for you. Is he that guy for UC? Because I look at him and I say, this guy's going to play in the NBA. I think he's that caliber of a player. What's kind of your take on him through two games, and do you think he's their kind of one from a scoring perspective here at this point?
Yeah, he's a guy that I haven't seen at UC. There's not a lot of guys in the history of the program that kind of have that mix of length and athleticism and scoring ability that you see in those prototype NBA guys. That's what scouts want. That's what GMs want. He's been great. And I also love how physical he is on the rebound and rebounding on both sides of the ball. In terms of him being the guy to score, I definitely think he's one of the top options. But if you're just looking for a guy who can create from anywhere on the court, and whether it's from beyond the arc, whether it's in the mid-range, whether it's at the rim, I still look at Shone. I mean, some of the shots that he's made this year and the shots that he was making at OTE consistently, he's that guy that when you need a bucket in a pinch, you're going to give him the ball. You haven't really seen it yet. He was sick against Georgia State, played well against Western Carolina, scored 18 points. But I think you're going to see him come along and have that success. Maybe it starts tonight against Dayton. But I just love his game so much. And I think if you're going to pick out of those three guys that are going to be drafted, have the chance to be drafted, Mustafa Sham, Baba Miller, and Sean Abayev, I would still put Abayev as that highest pick guy just because of how dangerous he can be on the offensive end.
A lot was made coming into the year about kind of the change in play style a little bit. Wes wants to get out and he really wants to run this year. And it's one thing to say that, summertime, one thing to say it during exhibition, and then to actually do it during the season. I get it against limited competition, but you can definitely see a change in playing style, I think, from last year to this year. What's kind of your take on that and the pace they've been playing with?
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, last year people kind of complained about that. At least in the not really complained about it in the media, but were asking him because they played so slow. And then he had made comments like, "Just because you play fast doesn't mean you're good." And then now it's this year, we're going to play really, really fast. And I'm not like holding that against them at all. I think the roster fits better to play fast, and it's spearheaded by Kirk Kriisa, because he wants to get that ball and go. And Wes has talked about that multiple times. And when you have that veteran guard who you can kind of rely on to lead that, I think that Wes Miller is more willing and more interested in actually kind of tying yourself to this and forcing it to work. I'd be interested to see how fans react at the start of the Big 12 when they're trying to play like that, or when they struggle against those big non-conference opponents. And is it a thing where, you walk it back? But then they also hate the offense of, give it to a big at the 3-point line and then see if they can make something happen in terms of passing it. Like, that's where you initiate the offense. And then everything just seems stagnant and it's like no one's moving. So I think they love the transition. I think that's a great way to create some momentum. But, the fast-paced stuff is really interesting to me. But Kirk Kriisa is leading it. I love Kirk Kriisa. I think he has a great personality. I think he's a great player with a ton of experience. And him leading that, I think, will lead to some success offensively for UC.
Great stuff here. Keegan Nickerson joining us live from Bearcat Journal for a couple of more minutes. Want to ask about the turnovers here as well. That's kind of been an issue through 2 games. Do you think that's a result of, playing a little bit faster? I mean, a lot of the turnovers are kind of unforced errors with some traveling violations, some double dribbles there as well. Do you think that is impacted by them trying to play a little bit faster, or is that just kind of, early season bumps in the road? And I guess, are you concerned about that here at this point?
I think it's definitely a factor, but I think Wes said, we're going to have some turnovers when you play up pace, a higher pace, faster pace is the right phrase. Geez. But you're also going to, when you do it so much, you're going to be used to it and you're going to be more efficient in it. So I think it's kind of a mix of both. Of you've got 2 games under your belt where the turnovers have been bad and he's addressed it after the game. And then you're trying to play this new style that a lot of guys aren't used to. So you're definitely going to see those turnovers. But I'll also throw in the chemistry piece that I mentioned before and you mentioned it, like it's double dribbles. It's making passes where you think guys are going to be certain places and they're not. So I think once the chemistry continues to grow, once they keep playing with this fast pace, you're going to see some of that get cleaned up, because this team is going to score a lot of points. Like, this is going to be a better offensive team than what Wes Miller's had the last 2 years, at least from what I've been able to see as a reporter covering the team. And they're going to score a lot more points. What it's going to come down to is, how do you kind of adjust defensively? How do you play in terms of that Bearcat identity? How do you adjust during game? And that's where you could see Cincinnati have some success.
This team obviously is completely different from last year, but there is one guy still in place, and that, of course, is Day Thomas. A little bit more of a different role this year. Obviously, the leading scorer for the Cats last year, not going to be the case probably here this year, although he did kind of save him from a shooting perspective the last game against Georgia State. But I guess, what's your vision for Day Thomas this year and his kind of role? Clearly, Wes likes him a lot, one of his favorite players probably. He's still here. He's been loyal. But clearly his role is going to be a little bit different this year. I was wondering if you could maybe shed some light on what exactly you think that will be.
Yeah, it's a credit to what Keyshawn Tillery has shown over the summer, that he's kind of the number 2 point guard, because Day Thomas would kind of de facto get that role if Tillery hadn't come along and proven that he can at least kind of hold his salt in that area. But I think Day has been one of the most reliable and one of the most important players for UC in the last 2 years. He's been good from 3, especially like after struggling to start his career. And then you've got this really highly regarded true freshman and Jizzle James. And fans were like lobbying, like, start Jizzle, start Jizzle. Day is not good, start Jizzle. He just kept his head down and he kept playing on both sides of the ball. And that was the biggest thing that separated him, was how he played defensively versus how Jizzle James played defensively. And Wes Miller is going to put that defensive guy on the floor, if you're kind of given that difference in playing a true freshman or playing a JUCO transfer. So he's been really good and really reliable from beyond the arc, whether he's driving to the hoop, whether he's shooting free throws. And he's also just like a really good leader, a really great kid. And I know Wes Miller loves him, and he's putting a lot of stock into him.
It's the first game between these two schools at an on-campus arena since 2010, and that was actually a game in the NIT that Dayton won over Cincinnati. To me, that's long overdue, and the fact they're putting this thing back on campus is absolutely the right call. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. I obviously don't love the Heritage Bank Center, and I don't think anybody can say that they actually love it. Anybody who's actually been there, except they do have Diet Right, which is a gift from God. But I think that the NIL tied to that event was what made it worthwhile. Now I think maybe the numbers are getting so out of control that maybe the NIL that they were making from that isn't good enough to kind of sacrifice a home and home game. I don't have any like sources on that. That's just kind of my read of the NIL landscape and how crazy the numbers are. But I am happy that it's a home and home. I'm happy that they're playing at Fifth Third. I love Fifth Third Arena. I love the fan base there. I think it's one of the best home environments in the country, but Dayton might be even better. Like, Dayton's home environment is amazing, and I'm already looking forward to covering that game next year. I went to an Indiana NCAA tournament game there, and I've seen like Dayton play there before, and it's a great fan base. I've also seen Dayton beat UC fans like 75-25 at Heritage Bank 2 years ago. So I think it's great that it's a home and home, especially because you have other neutral site games this year. I think all of Clemson, Georgia, and Louisville are neutral site. So get that regional rival, get that in your home arena, and then just kind of keep that going.
UC has won each of its last 25 games against non-conference opponents at Fifth Third. You kind of touched on this at the beginning of our segment here, but you feel good about the Cats getting a win tonight?
I do. I think that they cover 5.5. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means, just because of kind of the weight that this game holds, and it's going to be a lot of guys' first experience against like a high major team. So I think that they cover 5.5, and I think that they end up winning. They get the ship right on the boards. I think Mustafa Cham also has a better game as well. I think he finishes down low a few more times than he has. Maybe has a little bit more patience on some of those shots that he was quick to pull the trigger on and ended up missing. So look for him, maybe 15 plus. And then I'm going to say Baba Miller has another double-double, 3 straight to start the year, and then you get that trend going.
Awesome stuff. Keegan Nickerson, you want to let us all know what you got going on at Bearcat Journal, where we can find you on social media, all that good stuff. What you got going on?
Yeah, follow me at knickerson42 on X. Make sure you subscribe to Bearcat Journal. Get all the best UC coverage in the market. I'm going to have a story posted later today on the football team that I'm super, super excited about. So you can look forward to that. And then also follow my boss, Chad Brendel. And then our intern, Austin Bass, is doing great work as well. So we've got a big team that loves covering UC, loves providing great content. So make sure you follow us.
Awesome stuff, brother. I appreciate you making some time here on a busy day. I know you got to get to press conferences and obviously a big day covering UC hoops here tonight. But, Keegan, I appreciate you stopping by, brother, and great work as always.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Stone.
All righty, Keegan Nickerson, Bearcat Journal. We certainly appreciate him making some time for us here at the show. He's got a busy day today. They got press conferences here in about 30 minutes. he's got to get to. Got to cover that, as he mentioned. He'll have a piece up on the football team later on Bearcat Journal, and some post-game reaction stuff, I'm sure, there as well for the basketball team after tonight's game. Hopefully a win for the Bearcats, but love Keegan Nixon, does a tremendous job for Bearcat Journal, and hopefully he can be kind of a regular guest for us here on the show. We certainly appreciate him. All right, let's talk Cincinnati Bengals. Didn't lead with the Bengals here today, but yeah, now it's time to talk some Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, big news yesterday. We had a live show. We had our, off the bench 10 to 11, my show 11 to noon, and then we get the report. I think Ian Rappaport maybe was the first guy on it. Oh, Joe Burrow, he's back. He's practicing. He's got the pads on. He's got his helmet on. This is actually a real thing. So, there's a lot of takeaways that you have from that. Obviously, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, there's some people in the fan base that have mixed emotions, right? We'll kind of play through all of them here at this point. Some people, you're 3-6. No reason for him to come back. Just get healthy, Joe, and we'll see you at training camp, and we'll try to do the whole thing over in 2026. That's not really the mindset that I have. And I had said this, when he got hurt the first time. Or not the first time, but in week 2 against the Jaguars, where it's like, if he is ready to come back, and this isn't a situation where you have to hurry him, right, and put him in a spot where, he's about 75% and he'll come back. That doesn't seem like that's the case by all accounts. And again, I wasn't at the practice, but hearing Zach Taylor talk, hearing Joe Burrow talk, clearly they feel good about opening his 21-day practice window here at this point for the Cincinnati Bengals. So basically, he's going to practice for a few weeks, and they have 21 days starting yesterday to activate him and put him on the active roster for Cincinnati. So I think the plan is for him to sit out this week. He's not playing this week. That is official. I don't expect him to play next week at home. But after that, Thanksgiving night, on the road, Baltimore, division game. He didn't directly come out and say this during his press conference, but my gut tells me that is the timeline in which they are hoping he can, take the field and be the starter for the Cincinnati Bengals. And, Reed talked about this on Off the Bench. Getting this news, I'm happy, right? It's great. Thank goodness Joe Burrow looks like he's going to play football again this year for Cincinnati. But then you just look at those 2 games that you just played against New York and the Chicago Bears, and you go, my goodness, if we could have just won one of them, right? Not both, but just one of them. If you just beat the lowly New York Jets, who literally beat you and days later blew up their entire organization, you just win that game. Or you just hold on for dear life against the Bears with less than a minute to go and just somehow, some way, get off the field and get a stop and pick up a win against the Chicago Bear team. Couldn't do it. So I get it. It's bleak, right? You sit there and you're 3-6. How do you feel about beating the Steelers and beating the Patriots? I think you're probably happy if you get one of those, right? And then next thing you know, you got 7 losses, right? Got to run the table with Joe Burrow coming back, right? But then again, I think 9 wins probably puts you in the spot to come back. But I want to be very clear here. I think this is the right move for Joe Burrow to come back, regardless of where you're at, as far as your record goes. And there's some people that would say, Stone, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's crazy. But you need it, right? I mean, this is a guy that you're paying, $275+ million. He is the face of your franchise. He's the face of this city. He is quarterback 1. And if he's in a spot where he can go out there and play, and there isn't a high risk of him re-hurting his toe injury, which again, I don't know, maybe there is, but something tells me there isn't if they're activating him and letting him practice here this week. And look, you just have to understand that he's the quarterback, right? And he's a competitor, and he wants to play. If the Bengals were 3-6, right, and Joe Burrow had played the whole year. Now, obviously, we all have our questions on whether or not they would still be 3-6 if Joe Burrow had played the entire year. They're not just going to shut him down when they're eliminated from the playoffs, right? He's going to play the whole year, right? That's what he would do. That's what quarterbacks do, right? If you're a professional quarterback and you're getting paid big-time money, you don't just take off when your team's eliminated, right? How many teams make the playoffs? Much of the league doesn't make the playoffs. They all have top-of-the-line players that are getting paid a ton of money. Do they just stop playing once they're eliminated? No. They keep playing. They're professional athletes. You only have one chance to sit here and play in the NFL. I'm not going to sit out here and say, he owes it to the fans, he owes it to the organization to come back and play. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If the doctors sit there, the trainers sit there, the coaches sit there, and Joe sits there and says, you know what, I'm not 100%, there's a chance we could hurt this thing again, I can't come back. That's totally fine. But if he's in a spot where he's moving around, the risk of re-aggravating the injury is not high whatsoever, you put him out there. That's your quarterback, right? You absolutely put him out there. Now, there are people in the fan base that say, yeah, it's great. Joe's coming back, might come back. We love watching Joe play, but what's it going to do, right? I mean, your offense has been unstoppable without him. Now you put Joe in there. Can it get much better? Maybe a little bit, but how's that going to help your defense? I totally understand that. But Craig Sandlin brought up this point on our live show yesterday when you're talking about Joe Burrow, is there is an intangible element here to this. Right? There is a different spark, a different juice, a different energy throughout that locker room, throughout the city, and throughout the organization when Joe Burrow takes the practice field. Right? These are professional athletes. Do they need extra added motivation? Probably not. But when you sit there and you say, oh, Nine's out here. Nine's spinning that thing. Oh, he looks pretty good out here. What, we 3-6? Oh, that's not good. How's the rest of the division? Oh, division's kind of wide open. Here's this thing. Is that going to magically fix your defense? No, but it provides some new confidence, right? It provides some new energy, a spark, right? Maybe this thing isn't over quite yet. Now, obviously, if you go give up 50 to Pittsburgh this week and lose, that all evaporates pretty quickly. But I think there is something to be said about, just kind of the uptick in energy and, juice that this team will have with Joe Burrow being back and actually practicing and actually showing his teammates that, there's a chance that he comes back. And look, if this Bengals team was 3-6, I was talking to Reed about this off the air. One thing I prided myself on was that I never wrote off the Reds, right? And I never wrote off the Bengals last year, right? I said the Bengals were done after they lost to the Bears. I think you sit here and say, must win. You talk about must wins all the time, right? I think you're allowed to say it once. And then if they lose, there can't be another must-win. It's like you already used that card, right? And I used it against the Bears. I said, this is a must-win game against the Bears. You didn't win, so I can't really say another game's a must-win, right? Because I already used that card and they lost. But I do think it's interesting that if this team was 3-6 and Joe Burrow was here this whole time, I wouldn't have said that the season's over, despite how bad this defense is. I wouldn't, because there's just that kind of level of magic when Joe Burrow takes the field for this team. And what Joe Burrow brings is he brings hope. And that's undoubtable. He absolutely brings hope. And I think if he can come back, right, on Thanksgiving, he will bring some hope. And there is an element to this there as well. Joe Burrow is a fierce competitor. The fact that he was able to get back this quickly is remarkable, right? I'm not a toe specialist. I don't know if he was just attacking the rehab crazily or if he got lucky with the surgery or if he just has good genetics. I don't know, but it's crazy that he's already back practicing here at this point. And honestly, a quick side note, Brock Purdy's probably like, shoot, I should have got the surgery because he didn't get the surgery. And what's he doing? He played the one game against Jacksonville, but he hasn't been able to come back. And now it's like, well, Brock Purdy, is he going to be able to come back next week or what? Whereas Joe Burrow's sitting here, he got the surgery, and he's got an opportunity to come back. So it's kind of interesting there. Obviously, Burrow's toe, I guess, was significantly worse, but kind of just an interesting dynamic there when you compare him to another turf toe injury in the NFL. But look, the schedule is difficult. It ain't easy, right? I've said this multiple times on the show. You sit there and you look at it and you go, they could lose every game. And you look at it and you go, well, if you just get off the field a couple of times defensively, maybe you could win a lot of these games there as well. And we'll see if Joe Flacco can continue to keep the offense going and if the defense can ultimately get off the field. Because the offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football, obviously that's a really good defense. Jesse Minter and the Los Angeles Chargers. But based on how they played on Sunday in a controlled environment indoors, it looked horrible. They looked horrible. So if there's some confidence that maybe this defense, after a bye, maybe some fresh legs could come in. And again, don't need the defense to be top 10, right? You can go and give up 27 points to Pittsburgh this week. Feel pretty good about the Bengals hanging 30 on, right? The way this offense is played. So ultimately we'll see, is Joe Burrow coming back? Is that going to fix the defense? Absolutely not. I understand that. But, when you see things transpire in the division the way they are, right? I mean, Pittsburgh had a great start to the year, and we said they're going to come back down to life. Well, they've done more than that because they don't look good. They don't look good at all, right? And then there was people out there that said Baltimore's going to get hot. They were right? Baltimore, you look down, it's like, dang, they're right back into this thing. But is Baltimore going to run the table the rest of the way? No, right? They're going to drop a game or two, and you play them twice, right? So, I was really happy with how Joe Burrow handled things in the press conference, right? Because I said this the second he got hurt. Whereas it's like, there's going to be noise. There's going to be, trade Joe Burrow, and there's going to be a bunch of nonsense. I just need to hear him speak, and then that will make me – I'll have, an opinion on whether I should feel good or not feel good, right? And I thought he handled the press conference yesterday perfectly, right? He had an opportunity. He could have went there and said, yeah, defense, man, not good. We need to score like 40 points to have a chance. Or he could have sat there and said, yeah, your guy's not playing well. Zach's got to be better. Duke Tobin's got to – like he could have thrown a lot of people under the bus. And he didn't do that, right? He clearly had a very positive mindset. I also was worried about just kind of his psyche, right? Because you talk about him being this psychopath, monster, serial killer guy. But at some point, if you keep getting hurt, like your brain's just got to mentally, I don't know if you can take it. But I think from a positivity standpoint, I think Joe seemed like he was in a good spot, right? And he had an opportunity to, really pick apart the organization, throw a lot of people under the bus. That's not what he did. He took the positive route, and he was like, you know what? The defense at the beginning of the year, they did some good things. And we sat here on the show and we said, first couple of weeks, I get you're playing the Browns and the Jaguars, but defense hung in there, right? And then, obviously, the past few weeks, then you had the stretch there with Browning where everything was a disaster, so you weren't winning those games anyway. And then, obviously, these past two, the offense plays great against the Jets and Bears, respectively, and you lose both games because of the defense. And he's like, yeah, we had some good moments defensively early, bad moments on offense. Now we're playing well on offense, not so great on defense. Got to have, complementary football, right? That balanced attack. You can't just have one side of the ball holding all the weight and the other side getting dragged behind. And unfortunately, the Bengals have not been able to do that this year and last year, right? That has kind of prevented them from taking that next step. But I was very pleased with how Burrow handled it. I left watching that press conference going, we're fine. Joe Burrow's the quarterback here, right? He's not going to get traded, right? He's not going to ask for out or anything. You just hope he can stay healthy. And if Joe Burrow's out there and he's healthy, you always have a chance, regardless how bad the defense is. There's part of me that thinks the defense can play that bad. You have Joe Burrow against the Jets, he wins that game. And I'm not disrespecting Joe Flacco at all because Joe Flacco was absolutely tremendous in the game against the Jets. Game you could have won. The Lions game with Browning, I think you 100% win that game. Said it multiple times. Burrow would have thrown for 450 against those guys on the back end of that Lions defense. So we'll see. I think all in all, it's a good day. If you're ticked off about this, get some help, I would say, right? This is the face of the franchise. It's Joe Burrow. He's back. This is something that should be celebrated. I get you're going to be weary, right, when he takes that first snap, if he takes another snap this year, which my money says he probably would at this point. But that's kind of what life is like watching Joe Burrow. Ever since the knee injury happened his rookie year, every time he gets hit, I wince a little bit. Every time you see him down on the field for longer than a second or two, you kind of look up and you say, oh, boy. Unfortunately, that's just part of it. And you best believe when he takes a shot, whenever he comes back this year, we're all going to be sitting there going, oh no, oh my goodness. It comes with watching Joe Burrow play. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is, right? But it's pro football. It's NFL football. He's getting paid millions and millions of dollars to be out there and be the quarterback. And if he's healthy enough and he's cleared by the doctors and the coach's staff says, you know what, it's a good idea if you play. And if Joe sits there and says, I feel good about playing, he 100% should be out there for this team. And hopefully it happens with the Bengals in a spot where they're not eliminated. If you can just pick off one of these two games, obviously if you win them both, great. But if you pick off one of these two, then it's like, well, if you run the table with Burrow, you're in, which is crazy to say. But at 10-7, you're in. 9-8, you have a chance. So, again, this thing doesn't have to be perfect. Burrow mentioned it in the press conference. You caught kind of a break, right, with how bad the division is. I sat here before the year, hand up. I said 3 teams are making the playoffs in the North. You could argue they don't even deserve one team to be in the playoffs. So we'll see. But, I said they were done after losing to the Bears. I'm not going to fully, back up on that here at this point. I know there's a lot of reason to be excited. I'm not going to say I'm all the way back in at this point. I'm not. I still think, that was a must-win game, and they lost. But there is some renewed hope here with Joe Burrow potentially making return. Obviously, that was the news of the day yesterday. NFL Power Rankings. We do it every Tuesday here at the show, and certainly looking forward to doing it here today as well as I get this thing pulled up here. 10-1, our Power Rankings here this week. Not a ton of change at the top. And as always, get in the comment section. This video goes up by itself every week on YouTube. Get in the live chat right now. Let me know your thoughts. A lot of people laughing at me for last week having the Patriots They're at number 1, but here they are. They just kind of beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, here we go as we do our power rankings here, and I get Keegan's social off there. All right, on the fly, here we go. Week 11 power rankings, and we'll start it off with the number 10 spots. And there were 2 teams that were candidates to be the number 10 team here for me this week. Look, I've been high on the Bills this year. A lot of people have. They have Josh Allen. He's an incredible talent, an incredible quarterback. You always have a chance when you have Josh Allen. But they just went down to South Beach, and they didn't just lose that game, right? They didn't just lose by a field goal. They got absolutely worked in that football game by a Miami Dolphin team who a lot of people think their head coach is about to get fired, and they have absolutely nothing to play for, and their GM just got fired. So to go in there and lose the way they did is not good, and I think there is a real argument for Buffalo not being on this list here this week. And the team that I was going back and forth with is the Los Angeles Chargers, who had a big-time win against Pittsburgh. The Chargers have a 7-3 record. They look like a formidable force in the AFC West. But I think the reason I gave the Bills the nod is just because the tackle situation for the Los Angeles Chargers is not good. Obviously, they lost Slater before the year. They've lost Joe Alt. And whenever you lose both of your starting tackles, like, you're in a really tough spot as a professional football team. So credit to the Chargers for picking up a gutsy win. They dominated that game against the Steelers. I still look at them as a playoff team here at this point, but I'm not quite able to put them ahead of the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen just because of that tackle situation. But let me be very clear. What happened with the Buffalo Bills last week is not good. And, if you're a Bills fan, I don't know if you're full out hitting the panic button, but you're definitely concerned, to say the least. At number 9, I have the Denver Broncos. Last week, I had them at number 10. I bump them up here one spot. They won an ugly game on Thursday Night Football, 10-7 against the Raiders, who are just a complete train wreck. The Broncos, they have an 8-2 record. Credit to them for that. They look like a lock to make the playoffs here at this point. They got the best or the second best defense in the National Football League. But let's be clear here. If they don't fix things offensively or show drastic signs of improvement, they're going to be a one and done in the playoffs. They're going to get there. Oh, congrats. Maybe you won the division. You get your hat, get your T-shirt, and then get blasted in round 1. If you're the Denver Broncos. Look, I was high on Bo Nix when they took him. I think he can get this thing turned around, but you cannot dispute the fact that he has regressed. If there's anybody that can get him back on track, it is Sean Payton. But this isn't just ranking teams based on standings here. You can't look at Denver and say they're a top 5 team here at this point. Yeah, they're a top 1, top 2 defense. But we're talking full team here with a quarterback, and I just can't put Denver above the 9th spot. Credit to them. They found ways to win games, have 8 wins on the year, but I don't see how you can put them above 9 here at this point. And I also don't see how you can put them above this team here at number 8, despite the fact they have a significantly better record. The Chiefs had them at 9 last week. They get bumped up a spot this week, despite the fact they didn't play a football game. A lot of people would say, all right, you got the Chiefs ahead of the Broncos, you're crazy. But a winner-take-all game, you seriously think the Denver Broncos are going to beat the Chiefs right here, right now, based on how they're performing offensively? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, the Chiefs, their schedule isn't easy. They've dropped some games. They need to get hot. One thing is for certain, AFC Championship not going to be played at Arrowhead Stadium. I would be absolutely shocked if that were the case. And obviously that you can usually just book it for the Chiefs to host that game each and every year. Not going to be the case here this year. Obviously they went to Baltimore a couple of years ago there as well. But they're going to have to go on the road. Obviously they're a threat with Mahomes and Andy Reid. I understand that. But, I've got them at the 8th spot. Some people might say it's a little high. I bumped them up from one spot and they didn't play. I get that. But, they hung in there against Buffalo. But then again, Buffalo just lost to the Miami Dolphins. But I think if you have the Chiefs outside your top 10, you're just a hater at that point. And by the way, that's okay. That's completely fine if that is the case. Tampa, I have them at 7. Last week I had them at 6. They lost, but they only get bumped down one spot. The Patriots, I think, are the best team in football right now, and they lost a one-possession game to them. Biggest concern with them is just injuries, right? Baker has lost a little bit of his MVP love here at this point. He, by the way, is banged up for this Buccaneers team. Abuka is tremendous. He is right there as far as Rookie of the Year goes with another guy who we'll talk about here in a second that plays tight end. But I know Mike Evans really hurts them, and you just ask Abuka to do so much, which he can, But I'm not quite as high on them without Mike Evans, but they're clearly a top 10 team. That's not a bad loss at all, despite the fact it was at home. Maybe some question marks a little bit there defensively. I don't fully trust their head coach, Todd Bowles, for what it's worth, but I still look at Tampa as a team that's going to win that division and probably win a playoff game there in the process. So a little bit lower on them without Mike Evans, but I'm not beating them up for losing to the New England Patriots, despite the fact it was at home. At 6, I've got the Indianapolis Colts. Last week I had them at 5. They get bumped down one spot despite winning in Berlin against the Atlanta Falcons. Said this earlier in the week. Daniel Jones kind of looked like Daniel Jones in that game, which isn't a good sign if you're the Indianapolis Colts. And I just think they're so reliant on running the football with Jonathan Taylor, who's definitely an MVP candidate here at this point. That's really my biggest concern with them is maybe they're a little bit more one-dimensional than I thought. Daniel Jones did not play well in that game against Atlanta. Credit to him. He was still able to win the football game, but they get knocked down a little bit in my power rankings despite beating the Falcons last week, Sunday morning. 5, I got the Detroit Lions. Very interesting. We haven't really talked about this on the show much so far this week, but Dan Campbell was calling the plays. Took that away from John Morton. And, I think that's certainly very interesting. And a guy that never really has called plays, and Dan Campbell, all of a sudden he's calling plays, and they're hanging 40-plus points, granted against a bad Commander defense. But, that just shows you the brilliance there of Dan Campbell. It will be very interesting to see if that continues. But the Lions are very much a threat. That running attack, man, Jahmyr Gibbs, that guy's one of the best players in the NFL. And people were banging on Brad Holmes and the Lions. Oh, you're taking a running back this early in the draft. Well, they hit that pick out of the park. And when you have a guy like Gibbs, who's on the field, obviously, with a bunch of other professional athletes, and he looks like considerably freakier and faster and more athletic than the professional athletes that he's on the field with, that says a lot. And Jahmyr Gibbs is an unbelievable football player. Goff's doing his thing, not turning the ball over. Jamison Williams, guy can absolutely fly. Oh, by the way, we didn't even mention Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have an edge rusher. Hutchinson can absolutely get after the passer. Lions, people had question marks about them early in the year after that loss to Green Bay, but they're clearly, to me, a top 5 team in the NFL. So are the Seattle Seahawks. Have them at number 4. Last week I had them at 7. They jump all the way up to the number 4 spot. They beat the crud out of the Arizona Cardinals 44-22. They're 7-2 on the year. Mike McDonald, he is a great young coach. What he's done in a couple of years is tremendous. John Schneider, one of the best GMs in football. That defense is young, athletic. They fly around. They scored twice in the game against Arizona, and they basically were like, Sam, you're having a great year, but we don't really need you in this game. We'll just turn around and hand the football off, control the clock, bleed the clock, and they dominated from start to finish. But great acquisition, signing Sam Darnold. JSN was a 1. He had the ability to be a 1, and they saw that, and they said, yep, we can move off an older DK Metcalf who can be, he can be eliminated from some games, right? And you're seeing that in Pittsburgh a little bit there as well. And he's just been tremendous, JSN. You trade for Shaheed. Darnold's playing at a high level. You're running the football. This Seattle team is real, and it's going to be fascinating to see them battle with the Rams down the stretch here in the NFC West. At number 3, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, top 3, by the way, exactly the same as last week. The Eagles, it's not always pretty, right? The tush-push, it's frustrating. We all hate it, but, they're good at it, and they pick up yardage when they do it. I thought Jalen Hurts made several really good throws last night, and for whatever reason, there's always players like this through sports where they're just really, really good, and they don't get the credit that they deserve. Jalen Hurts is a top-of-the-line quarterback. He's absolutely tremendous. He made a lot of great throws in the game last night. He had kind of the kill shot throw there to Devontae Smith that put him up 10-0 at the time. Sirianni did some really foolish things, which we'll touch on at the end of today's show if we have some time. But Jalen Hurts is an incredible quarterback. The run game's starting to open up a little bit more for him. Howie added, he tried to fix the defense. They bring back BG. We'll see what he can do. Brandon Graham, of course. They drafted well. Jahad Campbell, we all said we wanted him here in Cincinnati. He's a star, right? He's great at that linebacker spot. They get after the passer. They're just a complete team with a really good quarterback. And, it's not always pretty with the Philadelphia Eagles, but more often than not, if you make it ugly against them, they're going to come out on top. And I've got Philly at number 3, same spot as last week. At number 2, same spot as last week, a team that actually lost to the Philadelphia Eagles early in the year. The LA Rams, they're unbelievable. Sean McVay is tremendous. Matthew Stafford and Davante Adams are finally finding kind of a rapport, and they look like one of the best tandems in the National Football League. Right? If you remember, Stafford basically missed all of camp, and then Davante obviously new to the team, so they very much were learning on the fly. That thing has gelled. That thing has come together. That thing looks really good. Puka is tremendous. Does he have some issues staying healthy? Maybe, but he just plays really physical, tough style of football, and it lends himself to getting banged up a little bit here. But obviously, if Nakua and Adams are healthy, that is a good sign. They can run the football, obviously, with Kyron Williams. They got youth on their defense. They're really good there as well. McVay, one of the best, if not the best head coach in the National Football League. Matthew Stafford, if the season ended today, I'm voting for him for MVP. So blown away by the Rams. Had him going to the AFC champion or the NFC Championship before the year. I still believe that. And they're a really, really good football team, and Matthew Stafford is playing elite football. At one, had him here last week, and they responded by going down to Tampa and picking up a big-time win. That is Drake May, Mike Vrabel, and the New England Patriots. I think they're tremendous. They're for real. I understand their schedule has been relatively weak. Obviously, it wasn't weak last week when they had to go down to Tampa Bay. Drake May made a couple of mistakes in that game. The interception in the end zone flat out can't happen. Kind of a young player type mistake there. Hopefully he learns from that and can respond there. But Vrabel's done a tremendous job. I've said it a million times on the show. The fact that he was available and the Titans fired him is just a complete and utter crime. He's an elite football coach. He's doing a great job. Travion Henderson was unlocked last week. They play good defense. They set the edge in the run game. They stop the run. They got guys that can cover. They tackle. They do all the little things right. Do you feel great if they're in a situation matched up with the Chiefs and maybe even the Bills, despite the fact they already beat the Bills this year? I don't know, but they're going to be good for a really long time as long as they have Drake May and Mike Vrabel. And I've got the Patriots at number one for back-to-back weeks here. There you have it, our power rankings going into Week 11. As always, get down in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think. That video will go out on YouTube later today. There as well, as we get these graphics lined up here correctly. And I've been in on the Patriots, and I'm going to continue to be in on them there as well. And look, I understand they don't have Josh Allen, and the Bills do, but you look at the East, man. I think New England clearly the better team here at this point. Lastly, Brian Daboll was fired by the New York Giants. Kind of an interesting decision. Yeah, I've been on this for a while. When you're half in and half out, to me, I can't understand it. I can't understand it. And, the Dolphins are kind of doing this. It's one thing if you get rid of the GM, keep the coach. That's one thing. Right, I've always supported Mike McDaniel in Miami. He's got some quirks to him. He's kind of a goofball, right? And when you're losing, you're taking the podium, and you're doing that, it's not a good look, right? You can get away with a lot when you're winning. Look at Bill Belichick all those years in New England. But when you're losing, it's just it's a tough scene. So I'm kind of split on McDaniel at this point, whether I'd keep him, whether I would get rid of him. That's a conversation for a different day. But Daboll, he came in year one as the Giants guy, kind of had a miracle run there that first year. I believe they were 9-7 with Daniel Jones, and then they beat Kirk Cousins in the playoffs, and then everybody in the organization freaks out. Oh, we got to pay Daniel Jones. Oh, my goodness, we got the next great thing. And obviously that completely blew up in their face. He won, 6 games in year two and then 4 games last year. And then they gave him an opportunity here to stick around year 4, and he needed to make a splash, right? And they get Russell Wilson. It's like, that's not really going to save his job. You need to do something else. They trade up for Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart shows promise. It equates to wins early, Thursday night game against Philadelphia. And then Jackson Dart has shown some things in recent weeks, but it hasn't equated to wins, right? And you look at their schedule, and unfortunately for them, it's a common theme of blown leads, right? You had the game in Chicago, won. You blew it. Had the game in Dallas, won. You blew it, right? Had the game against Denver, won. You blew it. And, that's not a recipe for keeping your job very long if you're a head coach in this league. Part of me, I feel for him, right? Anytime a guy gets fired, you feel for him. He's making millions of dollars. I understand that. But I think there could have been something there, with Jackson Dart and him. Will it stunt Jackson Dart's growth? Maybe. It's a possibility. Say what you want about Daboll as a head coach, but he can flat out coach quarterbacks, call plays, showed that in Buffalo, showed it at the collegiate level at Alabama as well. He's had success in different areas. He'll get a job as a play caller immediately. Not going to get a job as a head coach right away, but he'll get a job as a play caller if he wants it. And, there's some questions there. It's like, he saw some good things from Dart. Now you're just ripping away his guy. And Daboll fully believed in Jackson Dart. He was banging the table. He wanted Joe Shane to go up and trade for him. He did. And then ultimately he gets fired. But my biggest issue is not them firing Brian Daboll. It's the fact that they are keeping Joe Shane, right? Half in, half out. Oh, we'll keep the coach, or we'll fire the coach, we'll keep the GM. The Giants have done this several times, and it doesn't work. They literally have done this multiple times where they fire the coach, they keep the GM. 2 years go by, and it's like, oh, nope, we need to fire the GM too. And then they do the same thing over and over again. Literally, it's happened multiple times for the New York Giants. I don't understand it. What has Joe Shane done, right, that is really productive? Has he made a couple of good moves? Yes, right? All GMs, you make a couple of good moves, right? But are we going to sit here and pat him on the back for the Abdul Carter pick, right? That's like sitting there patting Duke Tobin on the back for the Jamar Chase pick. It's a no-brainer, right? I know he got rid of Saquon Barkley. That ain't good. I know he paid Daniel Jones, right? That ain't good, right? I know he's failed to address the kicker position multiple times. They've lost games in the past because they don't have a kicker that can go out there and kick an extra point. That's on the GM, right? So I just don't get this half in, half out. And I think it kind of shows the organization or the fan base really, that they're not serious about winning football games if they're going to keep Joe Shane employed here at this point. He's going to lead this head coach search. I think if you're going to blow it up, you got to blow the whole thing up, especially if you're going to ruin this relationship between Daboll and Dart, which I think could have been potentially special. And they said, you know what? We're good. Daboll, you're gone, but we're going to keep Joe Shane here. And I get it, right? For the most part, a GM is going to have better relationship with ownership than the head coach, because the head coach is grinding at all times, right? They're breaking down the film of the previous game and prepping for the next game, and that's what they're doing all throughout the season. The GM, obviously, he's working a lot there as well, but the GM during season, he's up there typically probably in the box with ownership, rubbing shoulders with them, kind of being a PR guy, right? So Joe Shane is spending a lot more time with ownership than Brian Daboll. Maybe there's a relationship there, and maybe that's why they want to stick him around. But Joe Shane, to me, has done more bad than good, and candidly, it's not close. And, I think if you're going to strip it down, you got to really strip the whole thing down, right, and move off him there as well. Find a GM, bring him in, and then pair him with the head coach, and then kind of go from there. Because there are pieces on this Giants team. Well, they got 2 wins right now. They should have more than 2 wins, right? Because they've got guys on defense, right? Dexter Lawrence, right? Burns is having a tremendous year. Thibodeau has shown some good things for you there as well. Obviously, got the young pick and Abdul Carter, Malik Neighbors. He's obviously hurt, but he's a really good receiver in the NFL. I didn't think Scadaboo was going to be, an NFL type of back. He's hurt, obviously, but seems like a solid NFL back. And I think you hit on the quarterback there with Jackson Dart as well. So you're not the Jets here if you're the Giants, right? You don't need to blow up the whole roster. But I do think if you're going to move on from the head coach, well, you need to move on from the GM there as well. And I think that was a big mistake. And they're going to let him, do this head coaching search, and we'll see. We'll see. And we'll go through some names, in the coming days and weeks about guys that could potentially be the New York Giant head coach. But to me, this is a job that I think a lot of people should want. Right, it's the Giants. It's a proud franchise. Obviously, won a couple Super Bowls with Eli. Past few years have obviously been very, very bad. But again, this isn't the Jets, right? There's more stability and functionality. When you're talking about the Giants, a hot name a lot of people are throwing out there is Mike Tomlin, right? If him and Pittsburgh part ways at the end of this year, I think you're doing everything in your power to bring Tomlin to New York. And I think that would be kind of a good next chapter for him. I think he would fit in well. I think he'd be able to handle the New York media, right? Derek Jeter talks about that all the time. It takes a special guy to, handle the New York media. Derek Jeter did a great job of it. Eli Manning did a great job of it. We'll see if Jackson Dart does a great job of it. But, bringing in a guy like Lane Kiffin was like, I don't know if that's necessarily, I get it. The only qualification for Lane Kiffin is that he coached the quarterback of the Giants. That's it. That to me wouldn't be a great hire at all there from Joe Shane, who, again, completely ridiculous that he's calling the shots there and making that hire. But Kiffin, he's getting, it's probably great to be Lane Kiffin right now because Ole Miss trying to do everything in their power to keep him. LSU wants him. Florida wants him. And, if you're the Giants and, the Dolphins at the end of this year, I think there's probably some NFL teams that would have interest in him there as well. So a good time to certainly be Lane Kiffin here at this point. But Tomlin's the main name that pops out. By the way, this interim guy apparently knows what he's doing. He's kind of a younger guy, up-and-coming guy, and, it would be a massive mistake if Joe Shane if they win a few games here and Joe Shane's like, yeah, we'll just, we'll promote you as the head coach. That would be a disaster. But we'll see how this interim guy does for the New York Giants. But again, would I have fired Daboll? Probably not, especially at this point, right? Mid-season. But, it's New York. It's big. It's, these owners are they're brash, right? They don't always, sit there. They don't have patience anymore, right? And, these guys are billionaires. It's just kind of a rounding error if they have to fire guys and pay these contracts off. So I probably would have waited and see what he could do with Dart the rest of the way. I get the frustration with all the blown leads, and then probably make a decision after the year. I just think at the NFL level, I don't love always firing coaches before the end of the year. There's sometimes you have to. Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, right? That was a mess. Had to fire him right there. But it's not like college where it's like, oh, we got to restart this thing now. So we have all the people decommit, and then we kind of start the recruiting thing over. It doesn't really work like that in the NFL. I don't know if there's exactly a huge benefit of letting go of Daboll right now, especially when you have a rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. But I believe in Jackson Dart. Is he going to be a Hall of Famer? I'm not going to get carried away here, but I think can be one of the 32 best quarterbacks on the planet. I do think that is the case. And, a lot on Joe Shane's plate. He's a lucky man that he is going to hang on to his job here. But, my guess would say that he makes it a year or two, and then they fire him, and then they probably fire the same head coach there at that point. They kind of keep this thing rolling. But that's the biggest thing to me. I don't get the half in, half out. I don't get the half in, half out, especially when you keep the GM, right, and fire the coach. Don't really understand that whatsoever. Appreciate everybody tuning in throughout the duration of this show. Great stuff from Keegan Nickerson, Bearcat Journal. That interview will go up as soon as possible. Obviously, that game tips off at Fifth Third at 7 o'clock. So if you missed the interview, that'll be up on YouTube. Podcast will be up shortly there as well if you missed any elements of our show. And, a great couple hours here at Chatterbox Sports. We appreciate everyone as always. Mark Sheldon, MLB.com, talking Cincinnati Reds. He'll be on the show tomorrow. And I believe Reed's got Paul Fritchner and Jay Morrison, perhaps. Both those guys coming. So I think it's a guest-loaded day tomorrow here at Chatterbox. Lots to talk about, and we hope you join us again tomorrow morning. But until then, take care, everybody.